you.
It gives me a great pleasure, Jim, James Taylor, not the singer, as you told me earlier.
Yeah, that's right.
Who came to our school district about 1963. So if you could relate how you came to us and where you taught, and then it's my understanding in looking back that you were probably the first buildings and grounds director with that official title.
I think that is correct. And then the board really changed the title immediately for us as assistants to the superintendent. Yes, and I came from Indiana State teachers teaching at the lab school for a year before I came here. Prior to that, my teaching was all in North Manchester with a history of reorganization there and also construction of a new high school and setting up the department. And Harmon Bolden was my superintendent there. And he was not the first superintendent, but he was the first superintendent of the reorganization in North Manchester. So there's where our friendship began. Moved, had a job to Indiana State for that year, and Harmon left for Wayne Township as superintendent about a month or two after I did, and I always accused him of leaving because I left earlier. But our relationship has been wonderful with Harmon, and I recall that they were going to build a new high school here in Wayne Township, and Harmon was looking to reorganize the staff and get it set up for the new high school. So he came to Terre Haute to visit in early. It must have been late September, 1st of October, and wanted to know if I would like to come to Wayne Township as chairman of the department. Well, of course,
So what department was that?
That was the Industrial Arts Department of the buildings over here, complex, at that time in the Wayne Central building. So he asked if I come here for an interview, and a little interesting sideline there. It was during the teachers' convention or institute time at that time, and I had time off, so I drove to Indianapolis. And it snowed and rained that day, I remember very well. The administration office was in the Wayne Central building at that time, and Edna Wakefield was his secretary. So I get up here and I go to the office to see Harmon. Well, Harmon isn't here today. And that's the way my interviews have gone since, I think, with the school. But anyway, Edna said, just walk over to the big two-story building and see the principal, who was Madison Shadley at that time. And
now this was the Ben Davis High School.
Yeah, the Ben Davis High School, the original building. Ben Davis High School. Their offices were on the second floor. So I go up to the office and introduce myself, and he said, yeah, we're expecting you. And about the first thing he said after that was, well, Jim, if you want the job, it's yours. That was a simple interview. So I took the job as chairman of the department. And quite an interesting history behind that. And my job during the 2 years teaching there was, in addition to 4 classes, was to organize the new department at Ben Davis High School, Industrial Arts Department, and work up the curriculum and get ready for a new staff that was coming in.
Left us, you said, 27 years ago.
27 years ago, in July.
In July. Well, you've had a long history with us. So you ended up with a teaching degree then?
I ended up with a bachelor's degree in education.
Mm-hmm. And then where did you go for your first job then?
Well, while I was my senior year, I married my present wife of 65 years.
Eleanor?
My first wife of 65 years.
Only wife?
Yeah. And that's a good story. You ought to hear this one. We were married at Christmas time because I was doing student teaching in Decatur, Illinois at one of the junior highs. And there were 3 of us fellows, and went to Decatur to do our student teaching. But we were married at Christmas time, the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, in Charleston, Illinois. I borrowed my brother's car and $85 off of him to get married. We drove from Charleston, Illinois in my brother's car to Indianapolis. We stayed at the Claypool Hotel, which has since long been gone. And guess what? In Indianapolis in those days, there was absolutely nothing open in Indianapolis at Christmas Eve. Nothing. We found a place to eat at the bus station. So that was my first start. Now I graduated from Eastern then in 1950. Eleanor has already graduated. And
So she was a student there?
At Eastern, yes. She was a student at Eastern as well, graduating a year before I did. And she was teaching in Georgetown, Illinois. So I married her for the money. But I found out she didn't have any. When we got married, of course, I had borrowed the money. And the first year after college, I stayed in Mattoon, Illinois with a lady who went to visit her grandchildren, I think, at that time. And her husband stayed home. He worked at the railroads. And we lived there rent-free. And Eleanor prepared his meals. And I built her cabinets for her kitchen. Built them in the basement of her home, and when I got through, I couldn't get them through the door. So I had to take the door off and all the woodwork from around the door, get those cabinets in and install them. She was a great lady, but she was not there, and she was so nice and generous that she loaned me her car to go back to Georgetown, Illinois, to take Eleanor around to do home visits because she was vocational home economics, and that was one of the jobs, to visit the school.
To have home visits?
Have home visits prior to school. And I wrecked her car. And she didn't, not a word was said. She repaired that car for me. And she was 2 weeks later getting it. She was a teacher as well, but she didn't have a car for about 2 weeks because her car was being repaired. So my first job was not teaching because there were no industrial arts positions open in Indiana that I could get, at least. And I worked at in Danville, Illinois. Rode the bus from Georgetown to Danville. Worked at Elliott Lumber Company as a draftsman for 3 months. So that was the start of my experience. I was then hired as a cost accountant for Girder Construction at Newport, Indiana, which was building the nuclear water let's see, what was it called? Heavy water or something plant built in Newport.
That's Newport, Indiana.
Newport, Indiana.
Up by Clinton, Indiana.
Yeah, to west, south and a little bit west of Clinton. Mm-hmm. So I worked there about a year and a half, and I saw an opening someplace, or I think I had a job hunter or head seeker looking for a job for me. Manchester was open, so I'd go to North Manchester for an interview for a job there with the superintendent and the principal, because their offices was in the same building. Some big, just a city school building's what it was. So my first job was industrial arts there, setting up a department, and was teaching math. I taught math, half-time math and half-time industrial arts.
Well, you and Eleanor have been a real important part of our history. I really thank you for coming in today and sharing these stories. Thank you, Jim.
Well, thank you. I enjoy telling stories, as you can tell. I